Well, good afternoon, my friends. It's now 3 o'clock. The Trailblazers return to action tonight. The LA Lakers are in town. Tip-off from Moda Centers at 7. Chris Burkhart, Blazers game day at 5 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All Trailblazer games stream live on the iHeartRadio app. News just broke that Luka Dončić will not play tonight in the second of a back-to-back for injury maintenance, and LeBron James right now listed as questionable. LA played a makeup game last night against the Hornets at Crypto.com Arena. They lost by 3, 100-97. Our Trailblazer insider Sean Highkin will join me live here at Moda coming up at 4:20. Elsewhere, Victor Wembanyama being shut down the rest of the year after a blood clot was discovered in his shoulder. The Spurs believe this is an isolated incident. And in an effort to adapt to the changing landscape in college football, USC and Texas have joined Nebraska in canceling their spring games. Steve Sarkisian pointed to the expanded playoff and extra games with less rest as the primary reasons. And longtime Cowboys guard Zach Martin is retiring. He made 9 Pro Bowls in 11 seasons.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing. Brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE.
We try to listen to our fans.
The Spurs are trying to figure out exactly what the treatment plan is going to be, but this much is set. He will miss the remainder of the season. We know Victor Wembanyama loves to play basketball.
I mean, I know what my nerves are like.
Corner three, off again, Dončić rebound. Luka, long lead, wants LeBron. Can't find LeBron.
Yeah, it's a little too long that time.
A lot of rustiness for my part, so starting the game with like 4 or 5 turnovers, that can't happen. So just gotta, play them basketball the right way.
So I guess that third time is the charm of getting the second tech. So I got to do better.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
I was really looking forward to watching the two, LeBron and Luka, tonight. I wanted to see them together. I wanted the excitement of having Luka Dončić on the floor. As I pointed out yesterday, I'm a huge fan of misshapen athletes, and Luka Dončić is one of the best, and now we don't get to see it. And LeBron James is listed as questionable. He's got that foot issue that he's dealing with, so we don't know what his status is going to be, and I don't know if Luka being out will impact LeBron's decision-making when it comes to playing tonight. But this is one of the biggest issues that the NBA's got going right now. The load management and players not being available on a nightly basis when it comes to games. And I'm not suggesting that Luka should play if he puts himself at risk of injury, but what I am saying is that this is a league-wide issue where you have fans who pay for tickets. They go out of their way to get tickets for certain games. They're coming to the arena to watch certain players, and you have situations like this where tickets have been bought, and then you find out that Luka's not going to play. And it stinks because I was looking forward to it, and I'm bummed out that Luka's not going to go tonight. And we'll wait to see what LeBron decides to do. But the Lakers, unfortunately, for the Trailblazers and Blazer fans who are going to be at the arena tonight, they played a makeup game against the Hornets last night at Crypto.com Arena. It was a normal scheduled day off for the Lakers following the All-Star break, but they had a game canceled because of the wildfires down in Southern California, and so the NBA chose last night to be the night for the makeup. And so when I saw that pop up on the schedule and that the Hornets and Lakers would make up that game last night, I knew that there would be a chance that, there could be some load management going on, for the Lakers. And Luka, of course, is coming off an injury. Now, of course, he's coming off the All-Star break, but they are trying to make sure that he's 100% the rest of the way. But it's unfortunate. And the weird thing is I was talking to a couple of people today. This is one of those games on the schedule where the secondary market had really picked up and spiked. And the reason for that was because tonight the Lakers are in town. They always bring a crowd. There's a lot of opposing fans who come to the arena. I mean, you'll see them in their Crown Royal bags, hanging out, pretending to be Laker fans when really they're probably either LeBron fans or Warrior fans or a combination of both Laker and Warrior fans. But they fill up the Moda Center in their Crown Royal bags, and we like to see them leave after an L. Well, the secondary market had spiked today, and the reason why is because this is an opportunity for people to make a few bucks because Luka and LeBron are big names. And so what's happening now, once the word dropped that Luka's going to be out tonight, the ticket prices in the secondary market have started to fall. And so it's unfortunate. If you paid at the peak pricing on the secondary market to get to the game tonight, and now you're not going to see Luka, and we'll wait to get word on LeBron James. So very unfortunate for Trailblazer fans, for basketball fans, for Luka fans, any Maverick fans out there who are now Laker fans because the Mavs traded Luka. Well, that's the situation tonight. So I'm bummed out about that. But this is one of the big issues that Commissioner Silver was talking about before All-Star break when he did a little media tour. He was on with Dan Patrick and a couple of others. And, of course, load management continues to be a big key. And it's just something that's a part of the game now. But the problem is, especially when you get teams, at least there's another trip. The other part that sucks, too, about the game tonight, so the Lakers and Blazers play tonight here at Moda Center. Luka's not going to play tonight, and we'll wait to see what LeBron's going to do. The next time these two teams meet is at the end of the year, last game of the year at Moda Center. There's a pretty good chance that at that point, the Lakers won't be playing for anything, and they might rest Luka and LeBron in that game. So the two opportunities here in Portland that you have to see Luka and LeBron, you may not get to see Luka and LeBron. So I'm bummed out about that. But that's where we're at. So we'll see what happens tonight and what the Lakers do. I will say this. They did not look good last night in the loss to the Hornets. Like anything, when you make a big, trade, a big move, and you got to shuffle some pieces around, it's going to take some time for guys to figure out their roles and how everyone's going to fit on the floor together, even for LeBron and Luka. Two ball-dominant types who are alphas. How's that going to work out as they continue to play together? And I have confidence that two high IQ, high-level basketball players are going to be able to figure it out. But there is an adjustment period, and it will take some time. So that's the way it's going to play out. Now, I put out a question, and I'm serious about this, and it's going to sound like I'm joking, but I'm not. And it was in honor of Luka before I got word that he wasn't going to play tonight. The Mavericks clearly think Luka has a conditioning issue. And from what you've heard, they don't like the fact that he doesn't, commit to his training regimen, that he might be a little bit overweight. They think he's got a fat problem. And so my question is, who is the greatest fat athlete of all time? And I put that out there on social media, and I've had a lot of different people chime in with some very good names. So if you have thoughts on who you think the greatest fat athlete is of all time, submit your thoughts to me on X at Chad and Rip City, or you can call the show. I will give you the list of athletes that people hit me up with. But I really do love athletes that are a little bit misshapen and ones who maybe don't have the best conditioning, but yet they're still able to go out and dominate. Luka being one. I would say Jokic. It depends on what you want to classify Jokic as. If you've seen him shirtless, you would definitely think that maybe he's not the most well-conditioned athlete. Maybe he's got a little bit of, body fat. He's great. Luka's great. Baseball players that come to mind, Prince Fielder and David Wells. And I had someone hit me up and say, have you heard of Babe Ruth? And I would say that Babe Ruth is definitely a possibility as the greatest fat athlete of all time. But unfortunately, Luka is a no-go tonight. And for the Trailblazers, what do I expect? Well, I think what's going to happen is over the first couple of weeks now that we're entering post-All-Star break, my guess would be the Blazers will honor the players and allow them to go out there and compete. And they had a nice stretch. They won 10 out of 11, 6 straight, and then they lost 3 straight on the road, Minnesota, and 2 in Denver as they entered the All-Star break. So they still won 10-4 in the last 14 games, which is very good. My guess would be they'll allow the guys to continue to come out and compete. We'll see if they can put together another winning streak. But if they go to an extended losing streak or things start to go sideways, then we may see a reduction in minutes played by some of the veterans. I've not been told that, but I'm just trying to piece it together based on what I've seen the last couple of years. That I think they'll honor the guys, give them a chance to compete, see what they can do. But if they go on a losing streak, then they might, take a different look at how they want to approach the lineup and minutes that are doled out the rest of the way. 27 games to go, and the Trailblazers right now coming off the best stretch of basketball they've had all season. In regards to the players, it all comes down to player development, right? So that's one advantage to possibly opening up more minutes for the young players is you give these guys a chance to get extended runs. Donovan Clingan will get that because DeAndre Ayton's going to be out for an extended period of time with a calf strain, so Clingan's going to get a good run. Scoot and Shaden will continue to get big minutes. And then the two best players all year for the team have been Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia. And we know that both those guys are going to get a chance to play and play a ton. If they were to reduce some of the minutes with the vets, that could open up room for Ryan Rupert, who they want to get more of a look at, and also someone like Chris Murray, who the coaches have shown that they trust him and he can get a chance to continue to go out there and get some run. And also I would expect to see a lot more Jabari Walker over the final 27 with 8 now in the lineup because you're not going to play Robert Williams every night, and you don't want to play him big minutes because you're trying to care for his body. So that means Clingan will get the bulk of minutes at center. They can use Robert Williams, but when they go with the smaller lineup, you can see Jabari Walker getting a chance to play down low with his rebounding prowess, and that's kind of how I see things playing out. They'll honor the competition, allow the guys to play over the next couple of weeks. We'll see how that goes, and then I think they'll take a long look at how they want to dole out the minutes the rest of the way. But for the Trailblazers, again, regardless of win, lose, or draw, the most important thing right now is just to make sure that you continue to develop the young ones. Give him a chance to play. Continue to work with Shaden on his aggressiveness. And on the defensive end for Scoot Henderson, he needs to continue to showcase the improvements he's made with his jump shot and the three-point ball, decision-making, handling the rock, limiting turnovers. And he's been excelling on defense since January, which has been nice. For Donovan Clingan, just continue to get more run on the floor. Getting used to the officiating, staying out of foul trouble, and continuing to work on being a better finisher around the rim. For Toumani and Denny, I'm not sure they really need to look, too much more at those two guys. I think for them, it's just continue to go out and do what you've done, which is compete at a high level, defend tenaciously, and bring that type of atmosphere and energy to the games and to the practices. Denny and Toumani are kind of tone setters for this group, for this team, and I like the way they approach everything. So it's pretty solid. But that's where we're at. The second half of the season officially kicks off tonight. The Trailblazers have 27 games to play. There's going to be a ton of games in March, and then there'll be a mad finish in April in the first week. So there you have it. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on X at Chad in Rip City. The telephone number here on the Rip City Drive is 503-248-0620. Sean Hyken will join me live in person at Section 330 coming up at 4:20. And then Chris Burkhart will take over with Blazers Game Day at 5 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, Rip City Drive. Chad Doing here. Thanks for your time. Hope you're enjoying your Thursday. Lakers and Trailblazers coming up at 7 o'clock. I'm chilling right now at Section 330 at the Pines here at Moda Center. Well, I saw this story about Victor Wembanyama. It's kind of a scary story, but he's expected to miss the entire rest of the way. The remainder of the season with what they're calling deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder. Not really sure what that is, but the Spurs said in a statement that the condition is a form of a blood clot. It was discovered after Wemby returned to San Antonio after the All-Star game, and the condition is typically treated with blood-thinning medication, which usually precludes a player from participating in a contact sport like basketball. Wembanyama, according to the report, started feeling symptomatic recently, but believed he would feel better after 2 days off following the All-Star game. When the symptoms persisted, Wembanyama underwent a battery of tests that showed the clot. Now, a team source told ESPN that the Spurs are optimistic that Wembanyama will make a full recovery by beginning of next season. So there you go. Now, Chris Paul said it's tough. Tough more than anything, I think, for all of us, knowing how much he means to our team, but more so knowing how much he means to the game and how much he loves to play. Well, we were talking about load management. This is one of those situations where, we know about Chris Bosh and his situation. We know people that have gotten a blood clot and passed away. It can be a serious situation. So this is what you want. You want players to get their tests, get treatment, and if they discover something like this, no chance of taking a risk. Have them get the treatment, let him undergo some observation, and then hopefully Wemby can come back and be good to go next year. But young star, dynamic player, and one of the freakiest physiques we've ever seen in the NBA. That's someone that you want to have be at the top of his game healthy. So there you go. Kind of a scary situation there with Victor Wembanyama. Elsewhere around the NBA, if you're just joining me and maybe you're coming down to the game tonight, no Luka Dončić. He's going to be out tonight as he's taking a chance to get a little bit of rest. He's still trying to manage that injury, and he played in the game last night. It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances for us here in Portland because the Lakers had that makeup game put on the schedule last night against the Hornets. And so when I saw that and then I saw how the game played out with Luka and LeBron playing extended minutes, I think we knew something like this would happen. I thought it would be LeBron who wouldn't play and Luka would, and that's who I wanted to watch, but now it's no Luka and LeBron's 50-50. He's listed as questionable with that foot situation. So there you have it. That's the deal. It stinks, man. It stinks because I get excited to see certain players. I wanted to see Luka in a Laker uniform. It's still bizarre that he's a Laker. But the big thing to watch with this, okay, so let's go back. I was just heard this today. I think Brian Windhorst was discussing this. So the obvious play for the Lakers in this deal for Luka was to bring him in so he can be a long-term answer and a superstar following LeBron James' retirement. Meaning, after LeBron's gone, you've got your replacement in place. You've got Luka Dončić, and he can be a Laker, and he can fall in the footsteps of, Wilt, Kareem, Magic, Kobe, Shaq, LeBron, all of the greats who have been there. He's the next superstar in line. And so the idea is you bring him in, you get him inked up on a new deal, and he can continue on for an extended period of time. Well, here's what you've got to consider now with the Lakers. And this goes back to something I heard from someone I trust. So right now, he's in the middle of his contract. After this season is up, he's got one more year left, and then he's got a player option in 26-27. So really, you've got one more year after this year to where you've got to be able to work out a long-term extension. Now, what I was told by a pretty good source, or someone I trust, I'm not even going to call it a source, just someone I know that I trust. He told me that he had spoke to people on both sides, Mavericks and Lakers. And what he told me about with the Lakers is that Pat Riley was in town, for some event honoring Michael Cooper. And I can't remember if it's because he was being inducted into the Hall of Fame or the Lakers are retiring his jersey or something like that. But he was in L.A. recently, and he and Jeannie Buss are close. And so Pat Riley was just encouraging Jeannie, the owner of the Lakers, to, put together a plan long term, because he was trying to say, look, LeBron is bringing your franchise down. He's controlling your franchise. You've got to have an exit plan and a strategy. And so that's when the Lakers, pursued this opportunity for Luka Dončić. Well, the interesting part here is I asked this guy that I was talking to, I was like, well, okay, so I understand why the Lakers would want Luka. That makes perfect sense. But why didn't the Mavericks, pursue more first-round picks and only get back AD and a future first? And what he told me is the Lakers were very insistent and hesitant to give away a lot of future capital because there was no guarantee that Luka was going to sign or re-sign on an extension with the Lakers long-term. So it's not a guarantee. And I heard Brian Windhorst today talking about this where he said, look, this trade went down. The Lakers are going to have to work to re-sign him. Luka was blindsided by the trade. He didn't ask to be traded. He wasn't looking to go to L.A. and play with the Lakers, but he was dealt there. And so the big question is, will the Lakers be able to re-sign him? Now, if you make that move and you bring in Luka, you obviously think you have a pretty good chance to re-sign him. My guess is he'll probably re-sign because great players want to play for great franchises. And if you're the player on that team in that town where the Lakers are king, you're going to have a chance to be a big-time superstar. But some guys don't necessarily want that because there's a lot that comes to playing for that franchise because you're following so many greats. I mean, heck, even LeBron James, as great as he is, he hasn't really fully been embraced by, the fan base there because they all love Kobe. Maybe Luka will be a little bit different, but just keep an eye on that situation there. How the Lakers negotiating goes with Luka, how that process comes about, and are they going to be able to ink him to a long-term extension? The other thing that Luka's probably upset about is the fact that, by the Mavericks trading him, he no longer qualifies for that Supermax extension, and it's going to cost him over $100 million. That would be pretty frustrating. Similar to what happened with DeAndre Ayton when the Suns wouldn't give him the extension, and he had to go out and get a restricted offer, which cost him a year of money. And so players don't like that. So Luka, stunned by being traded, also no longer qualifies for the Supermax. Will the Lakers be able to re-sign him long-term? Just something to keep an eye on. I don't know how that's going to play out. My guess is it's the Lakers. He's there, and that's a pretty darn good franchise with a track record of success. So you would think that they'll be able to come to terms and figure it out for Luka. And that would be my guess. But that time's going to be here sooner than you think, so just something to keep an eye on. In other news, the Cowboys, it's been a rough go for the Cowboys of late with Jerry Jones and having to settle on a head coach, not having the playoff success with Dak Prescott, and having a roster that has holes, but it's difficult to fill it because you don't have the resources to make that happen. Well, we got word today that Zach Martin is going to shut it down. He's retiring. He has opted to retire. 11 seasons in the NFL, and he was a 9-time Pro Bowl selection. Only Hall of Famers Bob Lilly, Larry Allen, and Mel Renfro, along with Jason Witten, who is eligible for the Hall of Fame for the first time this season, have been named to more. He was a first-team All-Pro 7 times, tying in for the most in team history with Lilly and Hall of Famer Randy White. I mean, that is great company to have. But what's funny about these offensive linemen and these players that make a difference, especially at a position like guard, they don't get any attention. They don't have a big name. But when you draft a player like that and you can install them at a position and they take over and dominate at that spot for more than a decade, a lot of that work goes unnoticed. But when it's gone, you're going to really start to realize how special he was. I love players like that. You draft them, you develop them, you plant them in one position, and they're good and dominant at that spot for more than a decade. And Zach Martin is one of those guys. I feel bad for the offensive linemen. Left tackles will get more attention because that's one of the key positions on an NFL football field. And some of those names, we know pretty well. But when it comes to the centers or the guards, no one cares about the centers or guards on a football team. They're not catching the football. They're not scoring touchdowns. And their work goes unnoticed because when they do their job, you just know that the quarterback's not under a lot of pressure, right? But they don't get the attention because they don't handle the football. They're not a wide receiver. They're not divas. They're part of the offensive line. They do all the yeoman's work. And a lot of offensive linemen don't like to make a name for themselves or to talk to the media or to put themselves out there. But Zach Martin's a stud. And he's one of the all-time greats in a Cowboy uniform. And like I said, when you play for certain franchises that have a great history and your name goes down in the history books among the best, Like, that's pretty awesome, man. The only Hall of Famers, Bob Lilly, Larry Allen, and Mel Renfro, along with Jason Witten, have been named to more. 9-time Pro Bowl selections in 11 years with the Cowboys. And he was first team 7 times. That's pretty awesome. So Zach Martin is shutting it down. It has not been a good run for Jerry. Had to settle for a coach. He wasn't really sure what he was going to do with his current coach, waited to hire a coach, settled on a coach in Schottenheimer, and now the Cowboys continue to be a laughingstock. I want Jerry to turn it around so bad because I like him, but I just feel like he can't get it out of his own way. And I'm not going to criticize him for wanting to have control and make decisions because, he's the one that owns the team. But clearly, if you look at his track record over multiple decades, they haven't won a championship since the 95 season, and they've gone an extended drought without a Super Bowl and limited playoff success. At some point, you would like to think that someone as smart as Jerry Jones would be able to step back and do a little self-inventory and say, you know what, I got to change the way that I do things. I've got to reimagine how this operation is going to run. I've got to put different people in better positions so that we can have a chance at success. But I think a lot of times certain people, especially ones that are, mega rich, super successful, my guess is Jerry Jones doesn't really look in the mirror and look at all of his shortcomings or his failures because he's probably a very competent and confident individual. So when he looks at a situation, he doesn't maybe look at it the way I do. So I don't know. It's tough, man. The Cowboys are in a mess right now, and we'll see how things continue to shake out. But, for Mike McCarthy, maybe he's probably happy he's not there anymore because when you got salary cap issues and you got a mess to deal with, it's a big-time problem. The cap is going to go up this year. It was reported yesterday, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $22 million. Like, that's such a big number. Like, the Broncos have still got that fat cap number because of Russell Wilson being let go. But that $22 million is going to help to offset the final year of that Russ dead money. It's amazing how much the NFL continues to bring in. The salary cap continues to rise. The TV dollars are so massive that these teams, are getting flush with cash every offseason now where they have a chance to go out there and make something happen and add to their roster. Man, the league they are just jamming right now. It's very impressive. So I'm excited already for football next year. What are the Broncos going to be able to do and put more playmakers around Bo Nix? How are the Chiefs going to counter their Super Bowl loss as they continue to retool their roster? Will the Eagles be able to keep it together and maybe go on a run over the next 2 or 3 years and look to grab another championship? What do the Buffalo Bills do, and what's their counter move to be able to finally get over the hump in the AFC and beat the Kansas City Chiefs? What about the Cincinnati Bengals? The Brown family has long been known as a very cheap family that does not like to spend. Are they going to assist Joe Burrow and maybe drop the cash to keep T. Higgins? Are they going to look to retool and add playmakers around him? Because Joe Burrow is absolutely one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's probably number 2 on the list. But the Bengals, who have never been a big spending team, are they going to be willing to do whatever it takes to win? And if they don't, what type of strain is that going to put on their relationship with Joe Burrow? Because the one guy you want to keep happy if you're the Bengals is Joe Burrow. Because if he's happy and you're putting enough pieces around him to where they can compete, then he's going to be in a position to have success. But you don't want to have a disgruntled Joe Burrow. So keep an eye on the Bengals. I'm not really sure that's going to play out. And then how about the AFC West now? Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, and Pete Carroll, who's now taking over for the Raiders. See, there's already great storylines, and we haven't even gotten to the NFL draft. So that's where we're at. But for Jerry, I love Jerry. It's very rare that you have an owner who speaks so openly and talks on so many different matters and is willing to get out there in front of everything and talk about decisions he's made. We need more owners like that who are open and communicate and talk about their sport and talk about their game and talk about their team. He's really good at that. But he just can't get out of his own way. And, some of the decision-making, this happens where owners or maybe front offices, sometimes I think thoughts and ideas can get a little bit stale based on the people you have. And it reminds me of Joe Lacob down in San Francisco with the Warriors when he took over. The one thing I was told about the way he operated, and I think this is part of what led to their success, is that he did not want groupthink, meaning he did not want people to get in a boardroom and share ideas that they only thought that Joe was going to like. He wanted people to be aggressive. He wanted people to have different ideas and a different look at everything. so that you bring all these different ideas to the table and you get real creative on how you want to handle all these different matters. You encourage that type of activity, you encourage that type of thinking, and then from that, your franchise is able to flourish because you've got people who are sharing ideas. And you avoid the groupthink because people are not afraid to share the ideas they have, even if they think it might be a little bit wacky or stupid. I mean, how many times have you had an idea or something you wanted to do or something you thought that might be a good idea, but you were afraid to share it because you thought people might laugh at it, right? That stuff happens all the time. I mean, think about how many people thought the idea of Sports Illustrated, a weekly sports magazine, was a bad idea before they launched that. And it turned out to be a smash success for decades. You know, that's how those ideas start. So I like owners who encourage creative thinking. I like owners who empower people to step in and provide their expertise and to really live up and fill a role. And I think Jerry Jones needs to rethink how he's doing things. I don't know if he can at this stage in his career, but needs to be more aggressive, more forward thinking to get people in the right place to be able to do that. I mean, look at the teams that are doing that right now. Kansas City's been great in that department. Philadelphia, who just won the Super Bowl, one of the best front offices and ownership groups in the NFL, who are aggressive, who are always looking at different ways they can tinker and improve. I mean, that's the way it's got to be. That's why I'm interested in this, college football story. Nebraska was the first. We got news today that USC and Texas is going to join in where they're canceling the spring game. And when you first hear that, especially for us that have grown up around college football for years, it seems a little bit odd. But I like what Steve Sarkisian is saying. It's like, hey, used to, season would end, you get 30 days off, you play a bowl game, and then you move into the offseason. But now we're extending the offseason with the extra playoff games. And over the last couple of years, we've played multiple games in addition to our regular season slate. And that means we have less time to rest, less time to prepare. So we're going to get rid of the spring game, which will give us more time to rest and protect our players, but also give us more time as coaches to continue to work on the roster and work on all the different details within the team. So we'll see with the changing schedule, with the way recruiting's handled, with the windows, with the transfer portal, we'll see if other teams are going to jump on board with that. I'm very interested to see how that plays out. So I don't know, but I like the forward thinking there. It's very interesting to me. And, if USC does something, we make fun of it because Lincoln Riley, right? And the Trojans and the way they're getting dominated on the West Coast by Oregon. But when Steve Sarkisian at Texas is willing to walk away from a spring game that there are a lot of Longhorn fans that are probably irritated at that idea because they love going to the spring game. It's kind of like that annual event to kick off a brand new season. And now they're not going to have that. But if Sarkisian is willing to do that, then that tells you he's got some pretty good insight and intel with his group to be able to make those type of decisions. But how would you feel about that, Duck fans, if Oregon decided to cancel out their spring game because they wanted to have more time to recoup and rest and use that time more wisely? Would you be okay with that? I mean, would that frustrate you? I don't know. Interesting to me. All right, I'm here at Moda Center, Section 330. Sean Hyken of Rose Garden Report is going to join me coming up at 4:20. I'll get his take on the Lakers. No Luka tonight. What about LeBron? Get his thoughts on Wemby, who's going to be shut down for the rest of the year with the blood clot. But most importantly, I want to find out what he thinks is going to happen the rest of the way with the Trailblazers. How are they going to approach the season? How many minutes will the veterans continue to get? And will they allow the guys to continue to play and compete for wins and be aggressive over the first couple of weeks to see if they can build on what they did before the All-Star break? How are they going to handle that? And then more importantly for the Trailblazers, aside from player development, what is the ultimate goal the rest of the way? Now, are they focused strictly on positioning, in the NBA lottery? Are they looking only at player development? Do they want to open up more minutes for some of the other younger guys on the roster? What's the ultimate goals the rest of the way? We'll talk with Sean Hyken coming up at 4:20. And the breaking news that came shortly before the show, no Luka Dončić tonight. He's going to be resting. Lakers played a game last night. And no word on LeBron yet, who is listed as questionable. So there you have it. Sean Hyken's coming up at 4:20. We'll keep things rolling here. I'm Chad Doing, live at Moda Center. And you got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, just got this message from the 503. It says, Chad, I don't need to go on air, but I have a legit question for you to maybe answer on air if you may. Contrast and compare two wealthy sports team owners, Paul Allen and Jerry Jones, both very passionate, both with unlimited finances. Allen certainly more passionate about basketball, but neither able to get the title that they wanted without Jimmy Johnson. And since you're a Broncos fan, are you going to be a Birmingham Stallions fan when the UFL starts? Hey, it's football, and they both have horses for mascots. That's from Rev. No, I'm not going to be a UFL fan. Shacker, who's with me today, he's sitting down in Section 111. He watches the UFL games. I just can't get into it. I've tried. I tried to give it a chance. It just doesn't do it for me. The only non-NFL pro football league that I watched and supported was the Arena Football League. I was a season ticket holder for the Portland Forest Dragons for a couple of years. Me and my buddy Chris Tenney got tickets, and I liked it because it was football, but it was a totally different style of game because it was played indoors on a smaller field. It was very fast-paced, a lot of scoring, and I liked some of the different rules and the way that you could score points. And I also got to see my favorite moment here at Moda Center, or the Rose Garden back in the day, was seeing Kurt Warner with the Iowa Barnstormers. And I think Aradne Gadsden, who played for the Forest Dragons, went on to become an NFL wide receiver, played for the Dolphins, and played with Dan Marino. So I enjoyed the Arena Football League. That's the only league that I've been able to become a fan of and follow. But the XFL, I couldn't do it, and I just haven't gotten into the UFL. But I will watch it from time to time, but it's not something I'm like, totally into like I was with the Arena League, which I thought was fun. In regards to the two owners, what people forget about Paul Allen is that he did win a championship. He won a Super Bowl trophy with the Seattle Seahawks. And I do know this from one of his best friends, and he told me the story. They were at the Super Bowl in New York, and this is when they smashed the Broncos face in, unfortunately. It was not a good experience for me. It was great for Paul, bad for Chad. So his buddy and his wife are at this party post-Super Bowl after the Hawks crushed the Broncos. And he told me something that always stood out. He said that Paul came over and they were talking, and he was looking around and everyone's celebrating and the champagne bottles are popping and people are just having a great time after winning a Super Bowl. And Paul looked around, he looked at his buddy and said, isn't this great? And he goes, I really wish that this was the Trailblazers right now. So even in the moment where he had won a Super Bowl trophy, which is a major accomplishment with the Seahawks, and props to Paul Allen for his work and being able to do that, he wanted it more here with the Trailblazers because the NBA and the Trailblazers was his first love. And I respect that. But he did win a championship with the Seahawks. And, people forget this too, but one of the reasons why I love Paul, without Paul, the Seahawks would not be in Seattle, so we would not have the NFL close to us. He was the one that stepped in and saved the team when, who was that bum, Ken Behring, the old owner of the Seahawks who tried to pull an Indianapolis Colts or a Baltimore Colts and move the team. I think he was trying to get him to L.A., like in the middle of the night. It was a real shady deal. But that got shut down, and then what Paul did was step in, and he purchased the team, and he basically made a plea to the people of Washington and said, look, I want this team to be here. I love the Northwest, but I need a new stadium. And so I need your support to be able to get this done. And then I remember that went on the ballot. And what ticked me off is the only county in Washington that did not pass the stadium ballot was Clark County, the county I lived in. Now, at the time that Paul stepped in, it was a big deal to me because the Seahawks were my access to seeing the Denver Broncos every year. And from the moment I moved out here all the way up until the time they broke up the conferences and all of a sudden Seattle was in the NFC and Denver was still in the AFC West, I would go up and watch them every year. It was like my annual trip that I normally made with my dad at the Kingdome, and then later a couple of games at Husky Stadium, and then, of course, the new Seahawks Stadium. Going up to that game was great. So I wanted the Hawks to remain because I wanted to continue to go to the Broncos game. And then I ended up becoming a Seattle Seahawks season ticket holder for a few years, along with one of my former bosses, Larry Mello. And what we would do is we'd buy tickets, and then we'd divvy them up. We'd pick the games we wanted. I'd always get the Denver tickets. I'd give him first pick of everything else, and then we would split the tickets up that way. So Paul saved the Seahawks, kept them here in town, which is terrific. Won a Super Bowl with the Hawks, but could never get over the hump here in Portland. Here's what I know about Paul. He is willing to do whatever it takes to win, or he was willing to do whatever it takes to win, and he spent a lot of money to make sure that the Trailblazers remained here in town, got them a new arena built, and was willing to spend and cut checks if he believed it was going to help the Trailblazers. And really, for me, that's how I define the number one thing I'm looking for from an owner. Does he want to win as much as I want the team to win? And is he willing to do whatever he can to make sure that the team is in a position to win? And the most important thing about Paul that I can say is that you can answer yes to both those questions. Now, I think for Paul, some of the challenges that he faced were, like a lot of these owners, finding the right people or surrounding himself with the right people that he could trust to be able to do the job that he wanted them to do with the Trailblazers. And so, it took some time as he continued, to work through the role as an owner to be able to find the people that he trusted. And they came darn close to winning a championship on more than one occasion. He almost got there. And I would say we all acknowledge that probably 2000 was the best chance. And then they had the Game 7 meltdown against the Lakers down in L.A. But he came close. Almost got over the hump with the Trailblazers and got over the hump with the Seahawks, which was terrific. But I like Paul. I don't think he was a meddling owner. I think he was willing to do whatever it takes to win. But he was very demanding. From my understanding, he would call it all hours of the night. Wanted to talk to you if you were the general manager, wanted to discuss things. The other thing I like about Paul is that he wasn't passive when it came to engaging with information. He would have he had cameras where he could watch practice when he wasn't around the practice facility, from my understanding. I also know that he would get all the tape on potential players that they might draft. So all of the college prospects, he would break tape. He was trying to learn more about the game, and he was engaged in that process. So, Paul's everything you want. Wants to win, willing to spend whatever it takes to win, and has a true love and passion for his team. Like, dude, when you saw Paul, sitting courtside cheering on his team, like, that was pretty sweet. But he did not do it with a red face and craziness like Ballmer did. He was passionate about his team. And I also love the way that Paul cared about his players. I remember after Dame set the franchise mark against Utah, Paul went down to visit him in the locker room and stuff, and they took a picture together. I thought that was a cool moment. He loved his players too. Now with Jerry Jones, he struck gold right out of the gate. Right, he comes in, he takes over like a good owner would do. He had to make a tough decision. Tom Landry, who was well respected and a legend, was fired. He brought in Jimmy Johnson, a guy he knew and was close with, who was coaching in the college ranks, and then they made that incredible trade involving Herschel Walker, where they got $1 billion draft picks, and that's how they constructed their championship teams that won 3 Super Bowls in a very short period of time. But the problem is I think with Jerry, in comparison with Paul, I think maybe, at least from what I can see, maybe the ego is a little bit strong, maybe just a little bit too strong. Jerry wants to win badly, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to win, but I think his ego gets the best of him sometimes, which limits his ability to hire people who will tell him no, or people who will encourage him to do things that maybe he doesn't want to do but are in the best interest of the team. And I think with some of his coaching hires, it would appear, aside from Bill Parcells, hiring guys where maybe he can have a little more control over. With Jason Garrett, Mike McCarthy, and now, of course, Schottenheimer. I would say it's probably ego-driven. But, again, it's hard for guys like that not to have an ego because he's been major success at pretty much everything he's ever done. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. We'll come back. Sean Hyken's going to join us at 4:20. This is a mighty fine song, by the way. She can't help it, friends. Love this song, Shacker. All right, Rip City Drive live here at 3:30. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, coming up at 4:20. All right, it's now 4 o'clock. What's going on, my friends? Trailblazers back in action tonight. The LA Lakers are in town. Tip-off from Moda Centers at 7. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 5. Here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. News just broke earlier. Luka Dončić will not play tonight in the second of a back-to-back for injury maintenance, and LeBron James is listed as questionable. LA played a makeup game last night against the Hornets at Crypto.com Arena, and they lost by 3. Sean Highkin will join me coming up at 4:20. Victor Wembanyama being shut down the rest of the year with a blood clot that was discovered in his shoulder. The Spurs believe this is an isolated incident. In an effort to adapt to the changing landscape in college football, USC and Texas have joined Nebraska in canceling their spring games. And from the NFL, longtime Cowboys guard Zach Martin is retiring. He was named to 9 Pro Bowls in 11 seasons and a 7-time first-team All-Pro. All right, Chris Burkhardt is with me. And Sean Highkin's coming up at 4:20. Travis Demers, the voice of the Trailblazers, ruined my day because I got here early to do some setup and make sure everything was ready to go. I went down and communicated with Shacker down at Section 111. I look at my phone. I'm like, wait, what? No Luka? And it was a text from Travis Demers, and I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me. No Luka?
It's dumb. It's stupid. I don't like it. It's kind of the same situation with the Blazers here when they don't play Rob or Klingon on the second of back-to-backs or the first night. Here's the deal. This is my take. Either you're healthy enough to play or you're not. What's this injury maintenance stuff that we've been doing now for the last few years? I don't like it.
You know, look, if they're really putting Luka in a position where they're protecting him, then I don't have an issue with that. But it is a serious problem that the NBA has where you don't know night to night who's going to play, who's going to be available. And I mentioned this earlier, but that secondary ticket market for the game tonight, the tickets were going for a pretty good penny. There were a lot of people that overpaid to get to the game tonight because they thought Luka and LeBron.
Well, I know a listener to the game day in the fifth quarter who comes down for Seattle to Rare Games is coming down to a game because he wanted to see Luka. You imagine driving from Seattle thinking you're seeing Luka to find out that he's not.
Yeah,
playing. That's dumb.
And then what's really dumb is I looked at the schedule because I'm like, I know the Lakers play again here, and then I saw it's like, the final game of the regular season.
Yeah, so they're not,
They won't play in that game either.
Nope. It's wild.
They can't stop screwing us over, the Lakers.
No, it's you know what it is. It's because they're dodging Tumani Kamara. That's what it is. They're like they don't want Luka to have to be hounded by that guy for 48 minutes. But you just hit the nail on the head, though, Chad. This is a massive problem that the NBA needs to figure out when you don't know. What players are playing and when, and you almost go to like that NFL style, right, where you're not releasing your final injury report 45 minutes before tip-off. Like, if you would have known yesterday that, yep, this is your updated report, this is who's not going to play.
You're not spending $150 on a ticket.
Heck no.
Because now, after the word broke on Luka, the secondary market prices are dropping rapidly.
And I'm not even in the fan situation that's unfortunate too. But just for us, I was excited. I've been talking this up all freaking for weeks. It's the trade. Oh yeah, first game back after All-Star break. Luka in town. That's going to be awesome to see. No, you don't.
You know what it did for me is that it reminded me. I was thinking about sports and different things I like and what draws me in. You know what draws me in usually? Star power.
Star power, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
You can hate a guy, you can love a guy. If they're a star and you want to see them play because you admire their talents or you want the combination of Luka and LeBron to see how that plays out before your eyes, the stars bring me in. Always. And that's why I was excited for the last 2 weeks looking forward to this game.
Stars bring you in no matter what. How many people watch the Super Bowl hoping to watch Patrick Mahomes lose? They weren't watching to watch him put on another stellar performance. It was to watch a star take the L. So stars will bring you in no matter what side you're on.
All right. I had this question. I put it out on social today in honor of Luka before I realized he wasn't going to play. The Mavericks traded him because they clearly think that he's fat, right?
Yeah.
And I have a big fascination with misshapen athletes. So I want to know who the greatest fat athlete is of all time. And I've gotten some great submissions on this, but someone blew it for me. Whitey Gleason down in Sacramento. He's like, have you heard of Babe Ruth? And I was like, well, that's probably your greatest of all time. The greatest of all time is Babe Ruth, but there were other good submissions. Tony Gwynn was fat, and he was tremendous, one of the greatest hitters of all time.
Yeah.
Jared Lorenzen. There were a lot of guys who –
Hefty lefty.
A lot of guys who made the list. Other guys that came to mind for me were Prince Fielder. That's a big boy right there, but a great player. And David Wells, who was a terrific pitcher and had a massive boiler and did it well for a number of years.
David Ortiz was thick.
David Ortiz, a big boy.
He was thick.
The Panda, who won multiple championships with the Giants.
Pablo Sandoval.
Yeah, Pablo Sandoval. But there's a lot of guys. I've always fascinated by athletes who don't care about their physique and yet can still go out there and just ball out.
Well, it's like I told you when this was all going down, when they were dogging his shape. Like there's aesthetically pleasing in shape, and then there's game in shape. And Luka Dončić is game in shape. And all those other guys you mentioned, Fielders and Tony Gwynns, they were game in shape.
And you could probably technically put Nikola Jokic on the list because if you've seen him without his jersey on, his physique is not exactly chiseled. But Jokic would be considered a terrific all-timer fat athlete.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't fat by by general standards, but I mean, Tom Brady's combine picture made the rounds, right? Because he wasn't rocking what you would think is a prototypical physique. Even Patrick Mahomes has been dogged for having a little Dunlap here and there. So it's kind of annoying what our measures of what in shape is. But you're right, man. There's been plenty of people who people would say are out of shape.
Oh, another one too that came in was Kirby Puckett, who was a terrific player for the Minnesota Twins.
Great name too.
And won a couple of World Series, which was nice. I want to ask you this. How do you think the Blazers are going to approach the final 27 games? Are they going to honor the guys and their competition over the last month plus where they've won a number of games where you come out and let's say over the first couple of weeks entering post-All-Star break, you see what they do. If they're able to string together some wins, you allow the guys to continue to play and see if they can make a run at the play-in, or if they go on a losing streak or drop 4 or 5 games in a row, then do you start to take a long look at how you're going to dole out the minutes? Is there going to be a reduction in minutes for some of the vets like Ant and Grant? How do you think they're going to play it?
I think with a coach like Chauncey Billups, they're going to try to see what they got. I think they're going to play as hard as they can, and if they make that run, they make it. If they don't, they don't. And I think if they get to the point where they're mathematically out of it, then they finally wave that flag. I just don't think it's in Chauncey's DNA right now to want to say I'm done with that, and especially when you saw what this team can do, when you saw that 10-game run, man.
But would the front office look to see if they can make arrangements with certain veterans to where they're not available for coach to play?
I mean, I could definitely see that. I don't know if I agree with the you're not available to play, but I want to see, this is what you asked me what I think is going to happen, and that's very different from what I want to happen, because I want to see Scoot, Shea, Denny, and Klingon out there running together as a starting 5. That's what I want to see. And if you truly believe that you're going to try to move Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simons or whatever player during the offseason, and you did some of that trade deadline work like Joe said he did, then you might be time to just wave the flag on them and say, hey, you're coming off the bench, man. We're going to try to move you anyway. We got to give the keys to our next crew.
Do you think DeAndre Ayton plays again this year?
I don't. I don't. I think that 4-week timeline is pretty short for that calf strain. Obviously, be reevaluated. Reevaluated doesn't mean play. And I think you got to be real careful with that one, because I still think there's a future for him here, depending on how they want to work it. So no, I don't think he plays again.
Well, that's pretty scary about Victor Wembanyama.
Nasty work.
The blood clot.
It's similar to what kept Chris Bosh out, if I'm not mistaken, right? So you got to be.
Sucks.
You really, really hope that what the reports are coming out of San Antonio, that this is something they believe to be a one-off, is true, and it's not something that hampers him, multiple times. Because if it does, a clot is not something to be messed with.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you see certain teams and their medical staff being on top of situations, so they communicate with the players. If they discover anything that may be a little bit off, they get right to the testing, find out what's going on, and diagnose it, man.
Sometimes you wish you had that medical staff, though, because I'm like, how many times do you wake up? They're like, oh, he was experiencing fatigue. Well, how many times have you woke up experiencing fatigue?
I did this morning. I couldn't fall asleep last night. I fell asleep at 5 o'clock finally. And so I woke up feeling hideous. But, a little bit of caffeine, a little shower, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm ready to roll again.
I woke up at midnight on the nursery floor after trying to get my youngest to sleep.
But no, what happened is, you've experienced this before, I'm sure, but, sometimes, like when I have my full body workout days, I get this, my body overheat, I run at a hotter temperature. And so when I get in between the sheets, it's hard for me to sometimes cool off. And so I was running hot last night. I couldn't relax and fall asleep, and I hate it. You've been there.
Oh, I've been there. It's nasty work. It's not fun. So, yeah. No Luka tonight.
I know, it
Wemby's
sucks,
out
man.
for the year. Chad ran hot. We're off to a great start here.
I knew when they rescheduled the game last night, I thought that LeBron would be the one who was in question. I just assumed Luka would play. And so when I got news he wasn't going to play, I was really bitter. It put me in a bad mood for about 5 minutes. I had to shake out of it for a bit.
Well, that's fair. You should be bitter. I was excited. I wanted to see Luka as well. And now that you don't get it, it's terrible, man.
Well, I'll ask Sean Highkin if he's surprised. He's probably not surprised.
He's not. Nothing surprises that guy anymore.
Well, that's what I hate. I hate guys like Sean because they don't get emotional over anything. He just looks at it, looks at the data, assesses it, and it's like, no,
man.
They played last night. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I was like, of course he's going to play. He had a full week off. He's going to play.
Hey, shout out to that guy, though. How nice was it to see some Rip City radio videos from All-Star Weekend and the road trip?
He was killing it, man.
I'm going to talk to the boss who's happened to sit right next to me about how we need to make that happen more often.
And not only that, but anyone that can sit through the NBA All-Star game in its current state in person deserves some type of raise or something, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Burkhart, what do you got coming up on game day?
Well, first off, I gotta put the training wheels back on. I feel like it's opening night, and I forgot how to host radio for a minute. It's been so long. But obviously, we're going to be talking about the Luka stuff, and you asked me about it. But I think we're going to dive in a little bit, especially with that, our cold hard facts about what the rest of the season's going to look like.
Important.
Because I really think, especially as you talk to fans, there's people want the rest of the season to look a very specific way, and I'm kind of there with them.
What do you think the majority of fans want? They want them to compete and try to win?
No, I think if you went around man on the street, run around Moda today and ask fans what they want to see the young guys. They want to see the young guys in. They don't want to see the vets. They want.
But do they want tanking the rest of the way? Or they just want to see the young guys play?
I don't think they want tanking as much as they just want to see the young guys play. Like if the team out there is not winning, but it's Scoot and it's Shea and it's the young guys getting a chance to develop, that's what most fans I've talked to at least want to see.
I would agree with that assessment. Let the young guys play the bulk of minutes. If they win a couple of games because they're balling out, good. If not, then at least they're continuing to play and get a chance to develop.
And I'll tell you this. If you go out there and you play the young guys, Chad, you play Scoot and you play Shea, and those guys end up lucking into the play-in, there are people who be mad about that because, you didn't get Cooper Flagg. That would be what? That would be the rebuild working because the young guys were the ones that got you there, and that's something you can latch to. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the young guys.
Oh, by the way, are you into Cobra Kai?
Not so much. I need to be.
Okay. That's too bad. I want to talk about the finale with someone, man.
Yeah, well, I'm into Bluey and whatever's on Disney Plus that is animated.
That's the great thing about having daughters. You're into Disney Plus whether you want to be or not.
Yeah. Fell asleep on the nursery floor watching Toy Story 2 last night.
All right, big thanks to Burkhart. Game day's coming up at 5. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, is going to join me next here from Moda Center on the Rip City Drive.
It's pretty awesome that Luka's not going to play today.
Boy, forgive me, Sean. I almost talked over your beautiful intro right there. You just brought up something that's really cool. The Blazers put out a press release on, but one of the, I would say, eyesores from this arena, which is now older, is the video board, which is not up to NBA standards based on what we have at other arenas. But the Blazers unveiled plans for a brand new video board, which looks like it's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's been one of the things. I would say eyesore is a little bit strong because compared to newer NBA arenas, it's not up to the technological standards. I mean, you could make the argument that like the older arenas with kind of the older scoreboards and stuff kind of have their own little charm to them. I used to really like going to games in Milwaukee at the Bradley Center before they built their new thing. But certainly when you're especially as
when
they're
you're
looking
into a dome or something like the new arenas.
All this new stuff. I was just in Denver for the road trip, and theirs is pretty cutting edge, too, at Ball Arena. But especially when you look at over the next couple of years, the Blazers and the city of Portland are working on negotiating a long-term lease for the arena, and they've got some stuff coming up, like the Women's Final Four is here in 2030. They got the WNBA team coming in. They need to kind of get the arena. They at some point, I think they still want to host an All-Star game here. So they're going to need to get the arena up to certain standards, and there's still more stuff that they need to do. But this updated video display, I think, was a pretty easy one to get figured out, and it sounds like that's going to be ready to go by the start of next season.
As long as they keep the hustle boards, I'm cool, man.
I think they're keeping I haven't looked in detail at the actual pictures. I think it was hard to read the stuff. I would imagine, especially with a digital readout, if they get enough fan feedback that if it's on the video, they can put whatever they want on it. If they get enough fan feedback that like the hustle stats have to stay, I think they'll be able to make that happen.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. And I'm like you. I grew up in a different age, right? Before all the brand new arenas and stadiums came across the country. I do like some of the nostalgia that comes from some of the older stuff. Like when you come into Moda, they've done a great job of retrofitting it, and they've done a great job of adding local flavor to some of the food options and everything, which has been terrific. But I do like some of the older vibes you get in here, and it's one of the louder arenas. And, and fans have talked about this, not fans, but players or fans who visit, when this place is rocking and the Blazers are playing well, it is one of the better home court environments in the entire league.
It is, and I think there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be done with the arena. It's the oldest arena in the league to have not ever undergone a major renovation.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff they need to do, but I think this is definitely a good first step.
Yeah, 1995 was the first year. That's crazy.
30 years.
That's a long time.
30 years, yeah.
All right, a lot of things to talk about with you. Well, I'm just going to be honest with you. I came down to Moda today. I got set up and was doing some things. So I wasn't looking at my ticker because I was busy getting set up for today. And then I look at my phone, and Travis Demersa sent me a text, Luka's out tonight. And I'm just like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
It ruined my afternoon because I knew that it was possible because they played the makeup game last night against Charlotte, but it never occurred to me that Luka would not play tonight. And so I was just bummed out because I've been looking forward to this opportunity to see him in a Laker uniform on the floor here at Moda Center because – they already played Dallas, so we weren't going to see him again. But because he got moved to the Lakers, they were going to come two more times, and now we don't get to see him. I'm bummed out.
I was a little bit surprised by that because he played last night in the game against Charlotte, but he wasn't on any kind of minutes restriction.
Exactly.
And so
I saw that report.
So if he's not on a minutes restriction, then presumably he is able to play on back-to-backs, right? Because it's one thing if it's like, he's working his way back from the injury. Everybody knows he's not playing back-to-backs. He can only play 20 minutes a game. That was not the case with the Charlotte game. So I was expecting Luka to do both games, and then LeBron, because LeBron also played last night, to maybe play tonight, maybe not. I checked a couple hours ago. I heard that it's likely that he plays, but not certain. So, best case scenario, at least LeBron will play, but maybe LeBron won't play. So, I feel real bad for anybody that paid a whole ton of money on the secondary market to get tickets to this game. Because, the Lakers, even when the Blazers are bad and, it's easy to get tickets for a lot of games on the secondary market, the Lakers are one of the teams that's always one of the tougher tickets no matter what, just because they have one of the biggest fan bases. And now there's so much buzz around them because of the Luka trade, and now it's like, first of all, everybody kind of knows in the next couple of years LeBron's probably going to be done, so you're only going to have so many more chances to see LeBron in person. So those games are always going to be more, a tougher ticket. Now you add the Luka thing in, and now everybody that paid a lot of money for those tickets is kind of just left holding the bag if Luka's not going tonight.
Yeah, it's really a bummer. And I do know that the ticket prices, I pay attention to the secondary market because I knew that tonight would be a game where some Blazer fans would look at it as an opportunity to make a few bucks on their season tickets. But, as you know, when a team comes in, there's demand. The prices soar up, and so 300 level tickets were going for well over $100. But after the news came out about Luka, the prices have started to drop significantly.
40. I mean, probably people think LeBron is still going to play, so it's probably down to like 40 or 50. It's not down as much as it would be for if they knew that both of them weren't going to go.
I think it's you, Sean, that always tells me that NBA fans are more vocal about what's wrong with their product more so than other fans around the country, which I think is pretty funny, and I don't disagree with that. But I will say this, that of all the issues that the NBA has that they're trying to work through, the All-Star game and trying to figure this out or that or whatever, I still think the load management is a serious issue. For this reason tonight, like fans buying tickets to see a particular star or two, getting your tickets, paying big money, and then you get word late that they're not going to play. Like I don't know what the solution is. I'm not suggesting you should play a player if he's at risk of injury, but not knowing when guys are going to play and when they're not is a problem.
Right. There are some instances like, Joel Embiid, who's had a ton of pretty serious injury stuff throughout his career, or Kawhi Leonard, who has a chronic degenerative knee condition.
Or Robert Williams.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Guys like, I'm talking about like the guys that like people are specifically buying tickets to see. Like the guys at that level, like there are some guys like Embiid and like Kawhi who have legitimate, long-standing, recurring chronic issues that are just going to have to be managed throughout their career. That's one thing. Like, this Luka thing is just, like, again, if they had been up front and said, look, we know he's coming back from this calf thing, he's probably not going to be playing back-to-backs, he's on a little bit of a minutes restriction, then fine, like, people can plan accordingly. But this feels a little bit like pulling the rug out from under people.
Exactly, because what happens is I look at the situation, I'm like, okay, he just had a week off for the All-Star break. I saw the report that he wasn't going to have a minutes restriction, and also he's 25 years old.
Yeah. I mean, the calf stuff, I will say the calf stuff you kind of don't want to play around with the calf stuff, but also, like, if that's really the concern, maybe don't put it out there that he's not on a minutes restriction.
Be careful with your messaging.
Then,
you got to be cautious with that.
The Mavericks have not been, but back to when like Luka was with the Mavericks, they hadn't been great about like messaging with this type of stuff, and now I guess with the Lakers, they're kind of continuing that.
But then on the flip side, with a guy like LeBron, I would argue that his load management and the way that he's cared for his body over the last couple of years is part of the reason why he's still playing at such a high level in his 40s.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron's 40, so you're not going to really hold it against him if he's not playing, because nobody's ever been as good as he is at the age that he is.
Exactly.
So
you're probably trying to rest him because come playoff time he's going to have to increase that workload. So
absolutely.
I get that. But when you're 25 and you haven't had a history of significant injuries,
right?
Then it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I wanted to see him play.
Whenever I get excited, whenever these types of guys, Luka, Wemby, who I guess we'll probably talk about
Jokic.
here. Jokic, Giannis, any of those, Ja, when he's healthy, any of those types of guys, like you always get a little bit more, like I'm excited about coming to any of these games, but usually, when it's, one of those types of guys that's coming to town, I'm like, oh, cool, I get to see Giannis tonight, or I get to see Luka tonight, or I get to see Jokic tonight, or like,
with Wemby, and for those who don't know, it was announced today that Victor Wembanyama is going to be shut down for the rest of the year after they discovered a blood clot in his shoulder. The Spurs think it's an isolated incident, so it shouldn't be a long-term problem, which is very good. We'll see how things play out with time. But my big takeaway here is that what a great job by the Spurs medical staff to diagnose and quickly get him the treatment he needed before getting on a long flight or in some situation where it could have become, more of a threatening situation.
Yeah, and I mean, this is like I don't want to speculate too much about something like this. That's obviously when you hear the term blood clot, it's, a serious thing. You think about Chris Bosh, who had his career cut short because of this, and then he tried to come back a couple of times and still had issues with it. But then on the other end of the spectrum, Brandon Ingram, back when he was with the Lakers, this is probably about 6 or 7 years ago, had this exact same diagnosis, this deep vein thrombosis, or however you.
That's how you pronounce it.
That is. Did I get that right? Let's go. All right. But he had that exact same thing and missed part of the year one year when he was still on the Lakers, and then he was fine after that. It wasn't a recurring thing, and so there is precedent for somebody getting this specific thing and it not being a thing that stays with them the rest of their career. So you hope that that's the case with Wemby also, but obviously I don't want to speculate too much until we know more information.
All right, Trailblazers going to kick back in. They got 27 games to go. After the last game in Denver before the All-Star break, this is the question that you asked Coach. You wanted to know if he was happy with where the team was at entering the All-Star break. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I'm very happy with where we are right now. Obviously the injuries don't make me feel very good, and I hope that we can lick our wounds a little bit, over the break, and we need the break. We all do. Need a little time away from each other, but that's just what the break is all about. But I am, Sean, I'm happy with where we are as a group, as a team. Our young guys continue to take steps, and I loved these couple games right here for DC. I thought he was excellent, and he's gotten himself back to where he was when he was playing at a pretty high level early before he got injured.
All right, like usual, Coach giving his honest assessment on a question which I appreciate. I want to ask you this. Do you like where the Trailblazers are at as they come out of the All-Star break?
I think it's hard not to when you consider where they were this time a year ago, where, not only did they have a terrible record, I think they won like 15 games or something like that before the All-Star break last year, but they also just had so many injuries. Like, by this point, we knew that Shaedon was probably not going to be playing the rest of the year. Scoot was dealing with some stuff here and there. Other guys were in and out of the lineup. You look at this year, and, whatever their record ends up being and wherever they end up in the lottery, or if they are able to chase the play-in, however that stuff shakes out, there are a few things that you can look at with this season just based on, if the season ended today, you could say, okay, Scoot Henderson, after kind of a rough first year and a half of his career, he started to really turn a corner over the last 6 weeks. That's now he's, looking like maybe not a franchise guy like people thought he was when he was drafted, but definitely, I think we're out of bust territory with Scoot at this point. So that's a positive. How good Denny Avdia and Tumani Kamara have been, that's a positive. Chauncey in that answer mentioned Donovan Clingan, who we're going to be seeing a lot more of now with DeAndre Ayton out for at least the next few weeks. That he's had, he had those 2 monster games in Denver. It's been a little bit up and down for him over the course of the season, as you would expect with any rookie big man. But I think things are trending positively for him. There's things you can point to with the young guys that they drafted or that they traded for that are part of their future and say, okay, there's real development and there's real growth here. So, yeah, if I were Chauncey or if I were anybody in the organization, if I were Joe or whoever, I would feel like there were things I could point to and say, yes, compared to where they were a year ago, I would be happy with where they are.
Assuming the young guys remain healthy for the final 27, do you think Cronin and Schmitz will have the data that you need to really be able to plan as you move forward?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've seen these guys enough. Like, Scoot missed a little bit. Shaedon missed the first, couple weeks of the season in training camp with the shoulder thing, but he's mostly been healthy this season. Clingan missed a little bit of time, but he's been mostly healthy for a month or two now. So at this point, yeah, you have seen at least a half season of all of these guys, and you probably will have seen more by the time the season is over. And, with Denny and Tumani, who maybe missed a couple games here and there, but for those guys, you've seen basically a whole season of the type of production that you want to see from both of those guys. So I do think after this season, they will have a lot more to go off of and say, okay, these guys are part of our core. These are guys that we're building with long-term, and maybe these guys aren't.
Now with the backcourt, Scoot and Shaedon, do you think that they view them now as guys that they can build with moving into the future based on what they've seen this year?
I think the last month and a half has been really reassuring to some people about Scoot, because it was pretty rough early on.
No question.
There was, it was to the point that I started, there were various national outlets that were doing lists of the most disappointing young players, and Scoot's name would be on there, and you couldn't really argue with it because, he struggled a lot. But I think at this point it's been, a month and a half of him being legitimately good for the most part. He's had a couple of rough games here and there, but for the most part, I think Scoot they're very comfortable with, and I think they're happy with his growth, and they think he's not where he fully needs to be a full-time starter, but I feel like he's taken some legitimate steps, and I think they think that too. The Shaedon thing is so interesting because, we've seen, earlier in the season, we've seen kind of the highs of what it could be. He had a couple of 30-point games in November, in that stretch where they beat the Timberwolves a couple of times to save their season, that whole thing, the upside is still there, but we've seen over the last month, really, that 10 wins in 11 game streak started when Chauncey moved Shaedon to the bench. That was a big catalyst for that, putting Avdia back in the starting lineup, and I think it was very telling that in the last game when Scoot was out, the last game against Denver before the break, Scoot was out. You think that opens up a spot in the starting lineup to put Shaedon back in there, right? And then instead he puts Chris Murray, and I asked him why, and he said that he likes what Chris Murray brings defensively. And so he didn't specifically say, like, throw Shaedon under the bus and say, oh, he's not good defensively still, so I'm not starting him. But when I asked him why he was starting Chris instead of Shaedon, he said that it was because of defense. And so that kind of tells you what you need to know about where they still think Shaedon is at on that end of the floor. And that's going to be the thing that decides whether Shaedon is just like, a good scorer who, gives up just as much on the other end of the floor, or a legitimate two-way star, which, he has the physical tools and the ability to be a good defender. It's just, a matter of doing it consistently.
Yeah, because when I watch Shaedon, and you mentioned some of the flashes we've seen, especially earlier in the season, I feel like he's got the highest ceiling of all the young guys.
I agree. I've thought that the whole time. I think if every single best case scenario for him hits, I think he's the guy on this roster that I look at and say this is a guy that could be a multiple time All-Star. But it's just, there's so much that has to go right for that to end up being the way that it goes.
Yeah, I want to see that from Shaedon. What I'm glad, the good thing is about having Chauncey Billups, bench him and communicate the importance of is. And this is the same thing that he's talked about with Ant or different guys in the past, where you don't want to become the player that other teams target defensively because they know that you can't get it done, right? You don't want to be a one-way player.
And this is a thing that with Simons, I wouldn't call Simons a good defender, but I don't think he is as bad as maybe his reputation is. But earlier on in your career, when you get stuck with the label of being a bad defender, you just can't shake that. And no matter what, even if you evolve to the point where that's not true anymore. Once people decide that that's true about you, especially as a smaller guard, well, that's an easier argument to make that, oh yeah, this smaller guy can't stay in front of everybody. That's just going to stick with you, and you can't escape that. And the way to to combat that head on and kind of nip it in the bud is to give the effort that you need to give on that end from the beginning, so that people can never say that about you.
All right, I want to ask you a couple of questions around the league because I just like to get an idea of what's going on in your mind, but. If we pull up the NBA standings right now, I want to know from you, let's start with the Eastern Conference. At the top, Cleveland, 5.5 games in front of Boston, followed by the Knicks, who are 8 games back, and then you got the Pacers with more separation at number 4. In the East, how many teams do you think have a legitimate shot to win the conference?
I think those top 3, Cleveland, Boston, New York. I think that those are when you look at, the depth and – with Boston, we've seen them do it, obviously, and with the Knicks and the Cavs, I think, especially with the Cavs, that DeAndre Hunter pickup, I think that was a good fit for them at the deadline. That was a good pickup. I think those are the 3 that I feel the most confident about.
I agree. I think there are 3 teams that could win the East. My take on the Celtics, I think what's happening with them is that they won the title. They know what it takes to win a title, so they're not going to kill themselves trying to get to the postseason this year. My guess would be once the postseason hits, they're going to crank it up several notches and start to become a dominant force like we saw last year. That's how I see it playing out with them, unless there's some real flaws that no one's talking about right now.
Well, you think that, but we kind of thought that about Denver last year, coming off of their title, and then it was just, they're just coasting through the regular season, and then there were real issues. Point. I think I think the Celtics. I would lean towards the Celtics are just coasting and they're going to be fine, but it's something you have to think about. I wouldn't be just definitive about the Celtics, doesn't matter what they do in the regular season, they'll be fine.
You're right. That's a great point about Denver. I thought the same thing, and then they got buzzsawed by Minnesota. In the West, Oklahoma City on top, 8 games in front of Memphis, followed by Denver, Houston, and the Lakers, who are 11.5 games out. Of the teams in the West, you said 3 in the East. How many teams have a legitimate chance to win the conference in the West?
Well, I think there's just so much more separation in the West. Like Oklahoma City is just so much. You just whatever metric you want to look at, just every single way you want to measure any of this stuff, Oklahoma City is, I think, a pretty clear gap between them and everybody else. And then, some of those other teams, Memphis is interesting if they can stay fully healthy and have all their guys. I think they've got a shot. The Denver thing, I think their roster is extremely flawed, but they still have the best player in the league, so I'm not going to completely count them out without that. The Lakers I don't see at all because of they're running out of time to integrate LeBron and Luka, and we're already starting to see them miss games. I just don't think that's going to happen for them this year. Houston, maybe. They're interesting, but that's a team that I don't know if has another gear to get to in the playoffs.
So is Denver the main threat to Oklahoma City in the West?
I think so. Memphis is kind of interesting, but yeah, Denver would be the one that I would.
how much of a factor can Dallas be, assuming that AD comes back in a couple of weeks and can be healthy come playoff time?
Well, do we think Anthony Davis is going to come back in a couple weeks and be healthy come playoff time? This injury, the injury that he's got right now is the same injury that Dame. It's the same core muscle injury that Dame had, where maybe. I don't think right now they're saying he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Let's see if they eventually decide that the surgery is the way to go. I'm operating as though Anthony Davis is not going to play again this season.
All right, Sean Highkin from Rose Garden Report. You can follow him on social at Highkin. He is our Trailblazers insider. All right, no Luka, but at least I got to talk with you, man. Thanks for your time, and we'll catch up soon.
I hope that's an okay consolation prize.
It was. It works. It works. I'm still bummed out. I'm like everyone else. I like star power, man.
I wanted to see him too.
All right. Appreciate it. Sean Highkin, ladies and gentlemen. Read him at rosegardenreport.com. We'll come back. Chris Burkhart's got game day coming up at 5 here on 620 Rip City Radio. Now, there were some names thrown there, like Raymond Felton. He wasn't great. He was just fat. And again, I'm mad at Raymond Felton because he challenged the entire city of Portland to a fight and was butthurt because fans were upset that he got like $10 million and showed up to camp out of shape. I mean, that's on him. I mean, come on, Raymond. He was not great. He was just fat. And so we got to make sure there's a clear understanding. We're talking about great, not just fat athletes, but great fat athletes. And here are some of the names. John Kruk, who I think said, I'm not an athlete, I'm a baseball player, which is pretty funny. John Daly, you definitely got to throw him on the list. Watching John Daly swing a golf club, especially a driver, is a thing of beauty. And what I love about him, he is great. He's won a couple of majors, the PGA and the British, but he embraces everything about his physique. He eats ridiculous foods on the golf course. He smokes heaters on a regular basis. He drinks chocolate milk. I mean, he does things that that doesn't make sense, but yet he's great. So John Daly should be on the list for sure. The one that I think is absolutely the best, and it was brought up initially to me by Whitey Gleason down in Sacramento, Babe Ruth. Considered the greatest baseball player of all time, and yet he did so while being rounded. He was not chiseled. He was fat, but an amazing baseball player, the greatest of all time. Jared Lorenzen's getting some love. Again, he is one of the most unique-looking quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. He looks like he swallowed an offensive lineman and then decided to go line up under center. But he was not a great player, but I did love watching him play. Kevin Duckworth, he's a Portland legend, but not one of the all-time greats in the NBA, but was a darn good player. Bartolo Colon, I mean, you got to admit, Bartolo Colon, to be able to pitch that well for that long and being that big, and he was a hefty dude, Bartolo. Vince Wilfork, one of the great all-time defensive tackles. He just ate up bodies. Like, if you tried to run the football and Vince Wilfork was there, there's a serious problem on your hands. He's like, here, come on, I'll take on all guys. 2 or 3 guys. Sometimes he would push like 2 or 3 linemen back into the running back, and he would fall over and fumble the football because the guy was so massive. Butterbean. Jokic is definitely on the list. As a friend of mine reminded me earlier today, it's like, dude, I know he lost weight, but don't forget about Jokic. I was watching that video the other night, and he was celebrating with his Olympic teammates, and he had his shirt off, and he was fat. He had some man boobs. You're right. Jokic is definitely on the list. And he admitted to it here in Portland during that 4 overtime game that he was, quote, chubby.
Was Jerome Bettis fat?
Yeah.
I mean,
he's great and a champion.
You got to put him in there then.
Oh, he's a big boy.
George Foreman. I'm looking at the list here.
Oh, did you pull up a list of great fat athletes?
It's an old one. It's a decade old, but it has William Perry, Vince Wilfork was on there, CeCe Sabathia.
I still can't believe that Mike Ditka gave the football to the refrigerator Perry in the Super Bowl and scored a touchdown instead of Walter Payton. That was a Richard move right there.
Yes, it was.
But if you get the nickname, like, for instance, certain nicknames, if you're called the refrigerator, it's not because you're a small individual.
Right.
It's one of the great all-time football nicknames, the refrigerator William Perry. I love that.
That's a good one. And
CeCe Sabathia was a large dude.
Andre the Giant was on that list too.
What?
He was big.
He was I don't even know if I could classify him as fat. He's like one of the largest humans ever.
Old school, old Andre the Giant was. But yeah, that's a loaded question. Got me thinking.
Yeah, Andre the Giant's big. But again, great is the key separation. A lot of athletes have competed at a large level. Like Oliver Miller was great on the Suns team that went to the finals in '93. He was kind of taken under Charles Barkley's wing. He was great that year, but he ate himself out of the league. That was a problem. But I think Babe Ruth is right up there. Tony Gwynn is right up there near the top. And Tony Gwynn was one of the best hitters of all time. Big boy. Kirby Puckett of the Minnesota Twins, without question. Prince Fielder. Here's a random comment from David Lauder. Watch the Spurs tank with Wemby out and end up getting the number 1 pick. If that happens, I'll lose my mind. Jared Lorenzen. A lot of people commenting on Lorenzen. But there's no question. It is Babe Ruth. Tyson Fury got a vote. Raymond Felton again. Young Charles Barkley before Moses Malone told him to stop being fat. And Gorge Foreman for sure.
Gorge.
Got to go with Gorge. He had a grill named after him, for crying out loud.
They need to play that in the arena more often. Let's grill it. Let's grill it. Let's grill it.
And it's the appropriate way to end the show.
Good pull.
You got to admit, fat athletes are great.
They give us hope. At least me. You're not fat. They give guys like me hope.
Because the problem is when I watch LeBron, I can't relate to that.
No.
A guy in his 40s, peak physical condition, still balling out.
No, he should look like Trailblazers Sean Kemp at this point of his career.